So just a few days ago, I made a video talking about how it seemed like there was news coming out of Tuscaloosa that Steve Sarkisian was interested in restructuring his contract with the University of Alabama. Now, I'd looked at this last year, and one of my best friends used to play cornerback for UTSA, and we'd been talking about this. After last year, when Sark didn't take the Colorado job, I thought it was a high possibility that if he was still at the University of Alabama after this offseason, he was probably in line to be the next head coach at Alabama. Now, make no mistake, Tide Nation, I don't think that this is anytime soon. I think Saban will absolutely play through his contract. I mean, you heard when he was not able to coach the team, how he just felt weird not being able to be there with his guys. So we have to jump into the news today regarding Steve Sarkisian, because Crimson Tide fans, this could be big. And if regarding what happens today could absolutely prove my theory. But before we jump into that, as always, y'all, go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you're here. Drop a like if you enjoy the video, and drop a comment down below to let me know what you think about this news. You know, earlier in the year, I'd made a video talking about how Tom Herman was on thin ice, and I got a lot of pushback from it. And I really didn't understand why, because to me it seemed so obvious. And I think that I was kind of misunderstood and I didn't use the right verbiage. Because when I said that Herman and Texas were complacent, a lot of people thought that I just meant they didn't care if they won games. Obviously, they care if they win games. If they didn't care if they won games, they wouldn't even play. Why risk injury? That doesn't make any sense. They care if they win games. They don't think that it takes much other than putting on that burnt orange helmet to win games. That's the problem with Texas football to me, and you can tell when they recruit. Recruits just flat out don't want to go there because of the lack of production they've had in the NFL draft. 6 picks since 2006 have gone in the first round. That was the year of the Vince Young draft. There's only been 6 first-rounders from the University of Texas after that draft, none of which have come on offense. 33 first-rounders from the University of Alabama since 2009. You can't make these numbers up, and why would you argue with them if you're a recruit? I don't care. I'm from the state of Texas. I have friends who are die-hard Texas fans, and even they will admit, if they were a 5-star recruit, it'd be very hard to choose Texas over even an OU or an Alabama when you know they'll send you to the first round on offense. Texas ain't doing that. So today, when Tom Herman was announced that he was fired, I didn't know how to feel, because should he have continued the job at Texas? No. Look, you can only lose out on so many big recruits before it becomes problematic. Let's look at this linearly, right? They lost out on Drew Sanders, the #1 recruit in the nation from last year, to the University of Alabama. Not the biggest deal. You can't always nab the best recruits in your state. Hell, Justin Ross was from the state of Alabama and Clemson got him. That's not the end of the world for the Crimson Tide. The nature of recruiting is so national, whereas it used to be very regional. Now it has become so national, it's just not feasible for you to keep the best players in your state home every single year. True. But what if I told you that the next year, the #1 player in your state is also not going to the University of Texas? What if I was to also add that the #1 player in your state, whose grandfather played for the University of Texas, whose father played for the University of Texas, whose older brother is currently on the roster of the University of Texas, and he says, nah, no top dog in recruiting there, and they don't put people into the first round of the NFL draft, why would I? He even quoted saying 11 of the last 13 tackles from the University of Alabama have been very high draft picks, so why in the world would I put Texas when they don't get guys to the first round on offense, and that's all Alabama does? How can you argue with him? What hurts worse is he has a twin brother who happens to be the #1 center in the nation as well. So the #1 tackle in the state of Texas, the #1 center in the state of Texas, because he's the #1 center in the nation, both aren't going to Texas. Both are triple legacies to Texas. That's a problem when that's happened twice in a row. But wait, there's more. Not only that, the #1 quarterback in the state of Texas is not going to Texas. The #1 running back in the state of Texas is not going to Texas. The #1 inside linebacker in the state of Texas is not going to Texas. The #1 wide receiver in the state of Texas is not going to Texas. You see a pattern of ineptitude in recruiting here. These recruits, man, they see it. They see college football for the business it is, right? And they're going to go where they have the best chance to be put into the NFL. And I understand that, one of the things they negative recruit Bama for is, oh, well, if you come to Texas, you're going to get to play. If you go to Bama, you're not going to get to play until your last year. Josh Jacobs was, running back 3 for his first few years at Alabama, had 1 year where he was really the feature guy, and even then he split it and he was a first-round pick. Quinnen Williams had 1 year starting, took over, and was a top 10 pick. I mean, Bama is proving you don't have to be here for 3 years producing to go in the first round. Give us 1 good year and we'll send you to the first round. Easy peasy. Now that we have all that out of the way, Herman is gone from Texas. So where does Texas look? They look to Steve Sarkisian. Word on the block is that they are trying to get Steve Sarkisian to jump ship from the University of Alabama to Texas. Now, they expect it to be announced soon. I would be very happy for Sark if he took this job because it's the University of Texas, man. Like, even though I'm an Alabama Crimson Tide fan, how can you argue with that? It's one of the most premier sought-after jobs in all of sports, and especially in college football. And a guy like Sark, who's young, who's enthusiastic, who's got a brilliant offensive mind, I mean, why wouldn't you want to take it? But at the same time, it really matters to me because that's not an easy rebuild. You're really being asked a lot when you're trying to rebuild the University of Texas, not only from the fans, but from the boosters. The culture there, I don't think, is optimal in order to turn it around. And Sark is a guy who maybe he could do that. But as of right now, it's kind of up in the air. I'm in a state of I would be shocked if Sark decided to leave, but I would also be shocked if Sark decided to stay, if that makes sense. But Crimson Tide fans, make no mistake about this. I'm going to go ahead and shoot my shot right now. If Steve Sarkisian turns down the Texas job and stays as the offensive coordinator at the University of Alabama, he is probably the next head coach of the University of Alabama. Y'all comment down below to let me know what you think, because this is crazy news. Just a few days ago, it looked like it was inevitable that Steve Sarkisian was going to restructure his contract with the University of Alabama, and now he's being mentioned for the University of Texas. You know, I did have somebody comment on my Steve Sarkisian video and posit this exact scenario to me, and I could only reply and say, actually, that's a fascinating thing to think about. That would be really intriguing, and my exact quote was, it would depend on how enticing Sark thinks that rebuild is. What I meant when I said that is he willing to sit through the boosters? Is he willing to sit through the fans? Is he willing to try and change a culture? Or would he like to sit and learn from the greatest football coach that has ever coached in college football and maybe take the reins after him? You know, neither one of them is an easy job. That's not my contention. You don't want to come after Saban, but Texas is also a notoriously hard job to have, but one of the best you could have. So y'all let me know what you think down below. Do you think Sark stays as the offensive coordinator at Alabama and gets his contract restructured? Or do you think he goes to the University of Texas? That's it. See ya.